Today on Africa News, Saif al-Islam Gaddafi, son of former Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi, has been killed, according to authorities. Sudan's army chief says it has broken a long siege on Kadugli as tens of thousands face famine in the region. And South Africa says it will temporarily withdraw from G20 activities while the United States holds the presidency. Welcome to Africa News. I'm James Ezimoha. South Africa says it will temporarily withdraw from G20 activities while the United States holds the presidency. The move follows President Donald Trump's boycott of the 2025 summit hosted by South Africa and confirmation that Washington does not plan to invite Pretoria to the 2026 G20 meeting.
The decision to step back from G20 engagements arises from circumstances beyond the South African government's control. Without an invitation from the U.S. host, South Africa would not be able to take part in leadership meetings, working groups, or summit-level deliberations. This forced Pretoria into its decision, which is described as a temporary setback shaped by diplomatic constraints.
And having hosted the most successful G20 summit in South Africa, it becomes quite unfortunate that South Africa is not invited to participate in the activities of the G20. That continuation of what happened in South Africa could also be missed. And my sense is that there should be a commitment from those who participated in South Africa to ensure that the agreements that have been reached are actually carried through.
The pause in the country's G20 participation comes at a time when South Africa is actively strengthening its ties with the African Union, BRICS Plus, and South-South partnerships. Some caution that this does not mean that South Africa is ready to abandon relations with the West.
It should not be seen as though South Africa is moving away from Western partners. Tensions are high between Washington and Pretoria. So this should be seen as a strategic shift temporarily to say, let's pause and shy away from attending the G20. And it's temporary. I don't think it should be seen as something that is permanent. Yeah.
However, some critics say that with this move, South Africa may face risks in financing and trade, especially with US-linked institutions. But Sean Masemula believes that investors will likely be more patient with the situation. The G20 group of nations includes the world's top economies, as well as the European Union and the African Union regional blocs. It accounts for 85% of the world's GDP and 2/3 of its population. South Africa plans to return to the G20 once the leadership moves to the United Kingdom in 2027.
Including at the United Nations.
In Libya, Saif al-Islam Gaddafi, the most prominent son of former Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi, has been killed, according to authorities. The Office of Libya's Attorney General said investigators and forensic doctors had examined the body on Tuesday and determined that he died from gunshot wounds. In a statement, the office said it was working to identify suspects. In 2015, a Libyan court passed a death sentence in absentia on him for suppressing peaceful protests during the country's 2011 revolution that ended his father's rule. In Sudan, the army says it has broken a long siege in Kadugli. This follows fighting between the army and the Rapid Support Forces that has displaced millions since 2023, with aid groups reporting widespread suffering as violence intensifies across Kordofan region.
The Sudanese army said it broke a years-long siege on the city of Kadugli on Tuesday. That could potentially give tens of thousands of people a reprieve from famine and may also signal a shift in the war's momentum. The conflict between the Sudanese army and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, broke out in April 2023. Since then, it has displaced millions and drawn in regional powers, causing a vast humanitarian crisis. Its latest front line is the Greater Kordofan region, which the RSF began sweeping through late last year. Jan Aglen is the head of the Norwegian Refugee Council.
And I must say I'm shaken to the core because what I saw was massive, unchecked suffering and a complete lack of the international community in responding commensurate to this, which is the biggest and worst conflict zone and the largest starvation crisis.
Kadugli and nearby Ardalanj had been under siege on and off since the start of the war. There was an escalation in fighting after Sudan's SPLM and rebel group joined forces with the RSF last year.
The mothers had one recurrent story. Our house was torched when my husband was out searching for food. We had to flee. I left with the baby that I was nursing and with my other 3, 4, 5 small children.
The army broke the siege of Ardalanj last week. In Kadugli, the siege caused famine conditions confirmed by a global hunger monitor last year. In both cities, residents said drone attacks continued after the sieges were broken. Some 147,000 people have fled Kadugli, according to the UN.
Ethiopian Airlines has resumed flights to northern Tigray just days after suspending services over security concerns. The move comes amid lingering tensions following clashes that revived fears of renewed conflict in a region still recovering from a devastating civil war.
Ethiopian Airlines has resumed flights to northern Tigray just days after suspending them. It comes after clashes between regional and national forces raised fears of renewed conflict. On the streets of Mekelle, the capital of Ethiopia's northern Tigray region, fighting raised anxiety.
Above all, the situation shocked many people nationwide. However, I am excited to see that flights resume. I came to Mekelle for work and plan to stay for a week. My schedule was disrupted for 2 to 3 days, but I'm happy that the flight service has resumed now.
I had planned to stay for nearly 2 days. After completing my assignment, I booked my return flight, but unfortunately, the flight was cancelled. I felt very frustrated. I hoped the flight would resume soon, but the cancellation continued for several days. As a result, we were exposed to unplanned expenses, including accommodation costs.
Government and diplomatic sources say clashes broke out at the end of January, with drone strikes killing one and injuring another in Tigray. Ethiopia's national army fought fighters from the Tigray People's Liberation Front for 2 years until late 2022. Researchers say hundreds of thousands of people were killed in the war through direct violence and the collapse of healthcare and famine. While it ended with a peace pact in November 2022, disagreements have continued over a range of issues. These include the contested territories in western Tigray and the delayed disarmament of Tigray forces.
Still in Ethiopia, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed says the country's economy is performing better than expected under IMF-backed reforms. Speaking to Parliament, he also rejected claims that the United States helped finance the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam.
Ethiopia's Prime Minister says the country's economy is on track to outperform earlier growth projections. The revised outlook comes amid ongoing IMF-backed reforms and renewed debate over Ethiopia's financing of major national projects. Addressing Parliament during a mid-year performance review, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed said growth could exceed expectations if momentum is sustained.
When you add up the results we registered in various sectors to the results we registered in the macroeconomic activities, we will secure a 10.2% growth. and that is even a very conservative one. If we work day and night in the next 6 months without distractions just like the past 6 months, the results might even be better than that.
Abiy also rejected claims that the United States helped fund the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, insisting it was built entirely through domestic contributions.
Ethiopia never took a single birr in terms of aid or loan for constructing the Renaissance Dam. It was a project accomplished because brave Ethiopians in the country and in the diaspora stood together in great courage and determination.
Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed addressed Ethiopia's House of People's Representatives during its 10th regular session, presenting a mid-year review of his government's performance and taking questions from lawmakers.
Ride-hailing giant Uber has ended operations in Tanzania after nearly a decade in the market. The exit follows prolonged regulatory pressure and growing competition from local platforms. Drivers and commuters now weigh the impact of Uber's departure on incomes and transport choices.
Ride-hailing company Uber has officially shut down its operations in Tanzania after nearly 10 years. The exit follows prolonged regulatory pressure and growing competition from regional and local platforms. Drivers say Uber's departure has reduced earning opportunities, despite alternatives remaining available.
We are currently using the Farasi and Bolt applications. Yes, we get some achievements on these two applications, but we got better benefits on Uber because they gave us drivers better welfare and they really valued their drivers. Bolt and Farasi care more about their customers instead.
Right now, we are hoping that they reduce the commission costs because it's tough economically now. The cost of fuel is too high. We have families and kids. We work so hard, but at the end of the day, when you do your calculations, you end up with nothing or little to spare.
Some commuters, however, believe the impact on daily transport will be limited.
Considering its operations cost, it was not too popular, and I think the decision to cease operations here in Dar es Salaam and Tanzania will not have a major effect because we still have applications that are more popular than Uber.
Uber's departure affects thousands of drivers and marks another test case in Africa's balance between regulation and digital platform growth.
Well, that's all we have today in African News. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to A News.